Hi there, my name is Andy Young and I'm one of the automotive lecturers down at Unitech in Auckland, and welcome to my Andy Mechanic YouTube channel. Now we're just over a year in on this channel and man, I'm so happy the way things are going. So thanks for all your support first of all. Now this video has come around because basically I'm not teaching at the moment. It's the summer holidays here in New Zealand. We get, as teachers, I'm going to make you really envious now, we get about 2.5 months of summer holiday off, basically. Yeah, okay, we've got to do a little bit of work here and there, and actually these videos that I make really help towards the course that I teach. So officially I'm working at the moment. It's great, isn't it? No, not really. I am on holiday. So this video came around because during my non-teaching times I get lots and lots of workshop jobs coming in to do at home. I mean, I've got a WR250 on the stand at the moment, getting some work done, and I actually had so much work come in over the last couple of weeks that I haven't had time to do all of it, and I had to contract out one of the jobs, which is pretty much a first for me. I don't mind doing it at all, and I often will send that work to one of my previous students. And in this case, it was a student called Daly. Hi, Daly. And the issue was a friend of mine, Neri, who I did a video, one of my very first videos, I fitted a band expander to her little car for her. Now, unfortunately, that little car had an accident on the motorway. Somebody rear-ended the vehicle a few months after I fitted that band expander, and that car was written off. So she went off and bought another car, which was a little Honda Jazz, and a good little car. Did her very proud. She commutes all the way to Auckland every day, does lots and lots of Ks, always driving about. Her eldest lad borrows the vehicle as well, so it does lots of kilometres. And she'd had that car now probably almost a year, about almost a year that she's owned it. And she sent me a message one evening saying, hey, look, it's making a real nasty knocking noise from the engine. We had to get the car towed home. Can you come down and have a look at it and have a listen and see what you think? Well, I got down there, and as soon as I started the engine up, there was that, that very recognisable big end knock, that rasp when you give the engine a bit of a rev. And first question was, when was it last have an oil change? And hadn't had an oil change in the whole time that she'd owned the car. Now, the last oil change sticker on the windscreen indicated that it hadn't had an oil change for the last 75,000 kilometres. Now, that's probably a bit far-fetched. I'm sure that the engine would have died way before it reached such a high mileage. But it did do a whole year without even the bonnet being opened, which, for a car that had done 250 odd thousand Ks, it's going to burn a little bit of oil. It's going to need a top up now and again. So basically the engine ran out of oil. Now, it could have been burning it, it could have been leaking it, we just don't know. All we know is that the engine ran out of oil and problems occurred inside the engine, and we know that the big end was an issue. But I just thought it'd be quite nice, and I've got the old engine here. The job's now finished, the car's back with Neri, and she's driving to work every day, very happy. Paid a lot less than she would have done at a garage, that's for sure. So, helped her out there. She's very grateful, I'm sure she is. Now, this is the old engine, and I thought it'd be really cool to pull this engine apart, strip it right down, and to see what kind of damage results inside that engine because it's run out of oil, and what things are affected by lack of oil. Well, obviously, oil provides lubrication. Everybody knows that. Oil lubricates stuff. But the oil also provides cooling to most of those components inside the engine. And the thing to bear in mind when you're talking about engine components, and I did cover this a bit on a lot of the RAV4 engine component inspection videos that I did earlier last year, is that obviously as a component heats up, the metal it's made out of will expand. And if it's a bearing, for example, the journal, say a big end bearing, the journal will get, if it gets hot, as it warms up, it expands, and the clearance between that bearing surface and the shell, or the, whatever it's housed in, I can't say touches because it doesn't with the oil pressure, whatever it's housed in, that clearance diminishes more and more and more. So the idea is that once an engine's up to operating temperature, that clearance between those two components is what the manufacturer's designed it to be. Now, obviously when the engine's cold, the clearance is a little bit too big, but it's not for too long, and that's, the oil should sort that out and keep it lubricated and prevent any kind of wear. But if the engine runs too hot, if it goes above its normal operating temperature, then those journals and other components will continue to expand. And that clearance, and it's an oil clearance because it's filled with pressurized oil usually, that clearance diminishes down to the point where it could become a negative clearance, i.e. it squeezes all the oil out, there's no oil able to be in there anymore because there's no gap, and then all of a sudden you get metal to metal contact. Now as soon as you get metal to metal contact, we get a tremendous increase in the friction around that component, and that of course increases temperatures dramatically, everything expands even more, and that's when you can get things like camshafts seizing in aluminium heads. They just seize solid, snap the cam belt, and then obviously the engine stops. And we used to get that quite a bit on the little Suzuki SJ410 engines when we get on oil blockage within the internal feeder pipe up to the head, get a little bit of gasket paper or something in the oil, and it would block that little jet that feeds oil up to the head, and very, very quickly the camshaft would seize in the head. So when we pull this thing apart, we're looking for things that have been scored, where the bearing surface has been picking up because it's expanded and started to touch. We're looking for things that have been overheated as well, and there should be some what we call bluing or rainbowing of the metal. That's an indication it's been, it's got too hot, and seized components, worn out bearings. There could be camshaft lobes that have worn down or got scored. All sorts of stuff could have gone wrong inside this engine. Even the cylinder walls could have got scored. Pistons could have started to pick up on the bores. This engine was pretty much driven until it ground to a halt, so it's going to be pretty bad in there. So without further ado, let's pull it apart and take a look. Here we go. Right then. So I'm not going to be showing you the official Honda disassembly technique. We're just going to pull this thing apart and have a look inside and see what's happening. So it doesn't really matter what we do first, within reason. And it's not going to go back together, that's for sure. Okay, one rocker cover. Here we go. It's started. Right. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Okay, well, Ooh. Bit of clearance. Cool. Okay, head bolts. All accessible with the cam in place. Right. Let's get the intake manifold out of the way. Give ourselves a bit more space. Lots of spare bolts. Pretty good. Oh, we'll get rid of that. bit oily. Okay, we can get the old injectors out next, can't we? Let's do that. That should just lift straight off by the looks of it. There we go. Come back. Petrol. Cool. Free fuel. Okay, so what's next? Well, let's get all this gubbins out of the way. Okay, what else have we got? Right, well this can come off. That should just leave her out of there. Cool. Okay. Right, let's get this casting off the back as well. List. Cool. Okay, one more to go. Nice. Okay. Well, other than the head bolts, let's strip down the front of the engine now and get the cam chain taken off. That's pretty important before we can take the head off. Right. Stay. Okay. So I'll get rid of this tensioner first. Okay, let's keep going with the old water pump. feels fine. Okay, big harmonic balancers to take off. Love taking stuff apart, it's great fun. Putting it back together again, well, that's not usually quite so easy, is it? Okay, well, pretty sure, with no manual to hand, that should come off now, that cover. See what happens. Sounds pretty hollow. She's moving. Perfect. It doesn't smell too burnt. There's a little tinge of burning. Oh, look at that for a view. One cam chain. Just like a motorcycle engine. Brilliant. Right, so let's get rid of the tensioner unit, which by the looks of it is this piece here. Yes, cam chain tensioner. All done by that by the looks of it. Okay. Man, it's a tiny cam chain. Okay, well, 10 mil. Well, that's the cam chain nice and slack. We'll get the slipper off either side. Right, Allen key number 6. Oh, it's smelling a bit more burnt now. Lovely. You know the smell of a wrecked engine. Right, one cam chain. No play. Cool. It's all super light, this stuff. It's great. Okay, what's next? Well, let's buzz that off. That's a 14 by the looks of it. Ooh, bit of residue on there, look. See all the oil building up? Sludge. But it's nowhere near as bad as it could be. Okay. Right, well, we've cleaned off all the cam chain side, the drive up to the camshaft, and all this side's clear, so I reckon now we can take the head off. Unfortunately, we can leave all the rockers in place for this. It looks like a 12. Right, it's really important that when you're cracking off the head bolts, you've got the engine well clamped, because these are pretty tight. These are very tight. Well, that wasn't quite so tight. Okay. Wow, that was loose. Maybe it was the first one we undid. Yes. So much easier with the engine held. Do it properly. Excellent. Right, let's just buzz them all out with the rattle gun. Sorry, Ben. Perfect. A useful length. I feel some kind of timber construction could make use of those. Maybe a new coffee table. Okay, so that's all the head bolts out. We can now, should be able to separate the head from the block. That's the plan. Ooh, look at that. Excellent stuff. Right, let's get rid of that. Well, what have we got? A few bits of debris in there. Let's get rid of the old head gasket. Dowel. Now, just before I roll it over, I want to pull off, pretty sure that's the knock sensor. All pressure light switch. We'll get rid of this panel here, and we'll get rid of the dipstick tube too. Just so that it's a bit cleaner. Oh, and that bracket there, look, so it's all this stuff's 10mm, so we'll rattle that off first. Cool. Right, let's get this plate out. Look at that. It's like an oil cooler bit, isn't it? Look at all the sludge in there. There's your problem. Oh man. That. See that? Yeah, you can see that. That's really bad. Okay, that's a really good indication that the oil has been very, very hot in this engine. Right, we'll look at that a bit more in the future during the inspection. We're just doing the strip down at the moment. Okay, so I'll get these whipped off. Take adjustable spanner, I think, is probably the easiest way of doing this. Adjustable wrench. Cool, yep, knock sensor. And there's nothing wrong with any of these sensors, so who knows, they might get reused one day. Oil pressure light switch. Okay, that is it. Now, what I've done is I've put a rag down because even though this engine's been draining for quite some time, there is still obviously a bit of oil in it, so I'm just going to roll that over. It's not a particularly heavy engine, to be honest. Nice and light. We're definitely going to get water and oil dribbling out of there. There we go. It's always good when you're pulling stuff apart to just keep cleaning up as you go. Otherwise you end up with a terrible mess at the end of it all. Now this isn't like the old kind of sumps. This is you know, the old school sumps were just a tin sump that just bolted to the bottom of the block and it just was there to hold the reservoir of oil. No, this sump is like an integral part of the structure of the block, and it provides not only part of the bell housing, but it also provides strength to the block to keep the block rigid. Okay, so we've got 10 mils, yeah, lots and lots of 10 mil bolts. Okay. Okay, we've got to a 12 here. And that's about it, I think. Okay, one final check round just to make sure. Oh, we've got one to take out. Down there, haven't we? Let's get that one. Okay. Well, looks pretty good to me. One magic hammer required. Ta-da! Ooh, look in there. There's much badness in that sump. All those bits. Okay, we'll get to that a bit later on. Okay, so we've got this sort of baffle plate combination with the caps and the cap bolts. But first of all, let's get the oil pickup strainer removed. And we're going to have a look inside there a bit later on. That's going to tell us quite a lot about what happened to this engine. And you can see just how black this side of the engine is here, look. You know, it shouldn't be like that. That's oil residue, burnt oil that's basically stuck the metal components. Not good at all, actually. And it's starting to smell pretty damn burnt. Right. Oh, no worry. Cool. Okay. Now, next job is to remove all these 14s. Now, I wonder if the rattle gun's strong enough for that. There we go. Look. Okay, let's get rid of all of those. So many free bolts. That's what we like. Put them in a degreaser. Put them into stock. You can use those. Super. Okay, now all the caps. This is all one piece. So all the caps are all part of this bracket, and this bracket's not going to come off until we remove the oil pump from the front of the engine. So that's the next job. Should have really done that first before we undid these, to be honest, but hey, it's scrap, it doesn't matter. Man, everything's really gloopy black oil, indicating it's been overheated, which definitely has it. One more. Cool. Right, one oil pump. I think we'll have a look in there later on. So, how are we getting on? Well, actually, we're cooking on gas. Things are coming apart really, really easily. No workshop manual, just, you know, a bit of intelligence. Take the head off first, work your way down, get the sump off, have a look inside. And then we're at the stage now where we're going to be pulling off the main bearing caps. It's all one big piece. And then we're going to start to see the bearings inside. Once we've done that, then we're going to pull off the big end caps. Now remember, I diagnosed this engine as having a big end failure. So let's wait and see if I'm right. There's quite a few components, as we've been pulling the engine apart, that have given us some telltale signs that things really have not been right in this engine, and that the oil has been massively overheated. Now that usually happens when the oil level gets very low. It just cannot cope with maintaining the temperature in the engine, because don't forget the oil helps to provide cooling as well, and it cools whilst it's in the sump. And there was a bit of a zigzaggy thing at the side of the cylinder, a couple of the cylinders, which basically is a bit like an oil cooler. It transfers the heat from the oil into the coolant, and that goes off to the radiator and gets dispersed, and yeah, coolant gets cooled down. So we've got sludge, looks like a few bits of bearing and stuff in the sump with all the cack that's in there. So we'll get this pulled apart, and then we'll go through each of the relevant components, not everything, but the relevant stuff, and see what we find, see what bits have been damaged due to the problems of lack of lubrication and cooling in this engine. Okay, here we go. So we should now be able to remove this entire plate, which has got all of the caps built into it. That's the main bearing caps. So it might be a bit delicate just to get out of the way. Just give it a few taps. Right. Okay. Well, you're the first to see this. We've got the shells, the main bearing shells, the top shells, still sat. Well, two of them are actually still here, look. So let's have those out of there. Very carefully. Don't need to be too careful, do we really? In all honesty. Right. Ooh, look at that. Now that's a main bearing. You can see where the white metal's been picking up. That's bad. Yeah, and the crank's all scored too. So we'll pop that in there in its relevant little hole. We'll talk about that later on. Okay. Oh, that's a bit weird. What the hell? Okay, well, you can see this or not, but there's a bit of gasket stuck between this shell and the crank. Gasket? No, it's white metal. Look at that. That's a great chunk of white metal that's come off the shell and been spat out the side. Jeez. It's pretty bad, isn't it? You know, taking these kind of engines, these kind of failure engines apart is really, I find really interesting. Okay, stick that back over here so it's all kept in order, and then we can do a bit of a summary at the end and all the things that we found. Okay, so that's basically, this is the back of the engine where the, I was going to say clutch, but this is an automatic gearbox. Yeah, horrible. So this is number 4 cylinder, number 3, number 2 and number 1, and you can see here, look at the colour change in the engine. So we've got sort of light brown residue at this end, and it just gets darker and darker and darker, and you can see that this area here has been getting extremely hot, and the oil has been burning onto the metal surfaces. You can see we've got all this residue around here. Look, on the crankshaft it's a lot darker. Yeah, and it's these two bearings, these two main bearings, that have failed. So bearing number 4 and number 5 been a major fail on there. See, there's a bit there, look, on the crank as well. Okay, right. So next job is to pull off the big end caps. Now, judging by what we've seen here, I think it's that one there that's going to be the worst. Let's find out. Now, although I like using the rattle gun, and I've been told off for not using the rattle gun enough, I think we can use a ratchet for these. Nice bolts. Right, we'll crack them all off and then we'll just buzz them all out. That felt distinctly different to undo than any of these. Let's see what this one's like. Yeah. Basically, didn't feel anywhere near as tight, and that could be down to the fact that the bolts have been overheated and they've lost the tension. Super job. Right, time to remove some caps. Well, we'll start at this end and then we'll build up to what I think is going to be the finale as regards the crankshaft stuff. See how hard that, oh, look at that, straight off. Okay, well, light scoring. See in there, look, got a few marks. Just little lines coming across. It's actually not too deep. You see how easy it is to score. Look, see what the screwdriver does? Okay. So that wasn't too bad. Don't forget, this engine has done, or had done, 175,000 kilometres. Sorry, 275,000 kilometres. So it, you know, it's not really designed to do much more than that, are they, these little engines? That's pretty good. That's pretty clean. Okay. So that's big end number 1, 2. Okay, so what's 3 going to be like? Well, believe it or not, it's actually not too bad. I think number 1 was the worst so far. Okay, so we'll put that one down there. And now for the last. Ooh, okay. Well, that's a bad sign because it's left the shell in. Right, let's try and get the shell out. Now, just before I go any further, see if I can get this on camera for you. Let's give it a bit of a clean. I don't want to disturb it because it's going to spoil the effect. Okay, so what you're looking at here is number 4 big end shell bearing. And you can see quite clearly there's some numbers here. Now, this shell, this is exactly how it was when I took the cap off. It should be aligned so that this edge here is flush with this edge here. But if you look really carefully, and it's quite difficult to get in with the camera there, there's some more numbers here. And this shell has also moved up. It should be level. The end of the shell should be level with this place here. So if I just try and, well, let's take the top one off first, if we can get it out, because what's happened is the shell has rotated round. There we go, look. It's basically, it's almost fused to the big end. Look at the state of that. That's really, really bad. It's so bad, in fact, that there's a burring of the bearing. The white metal has basically, you know, melted and been forced out the side of the shell. You can see that lip quite clearly on there. There you go, look. So yeah, especially down the bottom there, look. So really, really bad. But also what happens when the white metal gets disturbed, if you look here, there should be a hole by the looks of it. That should be the actual drilling that's inside the crankshaft, which supplies oil to this journal. Now, if this journal isn't getting any oil, then of course it's going to very, very quickly overheat, and you know, the white metal is going to get damaged even more. We're going to get more and more clearance build up, and you're going to get more and more of a knock from this particular bearing. So it's sort of exponential, isn't it? You know, the bearing overheats a bit because there's no oil. The white metal starts to break down and migrate around the bearing. It's sealed off its supply of oil. It doesn't get any oil anymore, and then it's just a matter of a few minutes before the complete demise of that journal. Really cool, actually. And we'll get the other shell out. Well, you can see the clearance. Look, that's how much additional movement there is on that big end bearing. That was the knock when we started this engine up. You didn't hear it, but when I started the engine up and you give it a rev, that was the rasp. That was a dig, 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 you know, and it was coming from number 4 big end bearing. So well diagnosed, Andy. Quite happy with that. Okay, well, I think it's time now we can lift the crankshaft out, inspect the other bearings, the other half of the shells on both the main bearings and the big end bearings, and then we can get the pistons out and see if there's any damage to the bores too. Okay, now I've just removed the rear crankshaft oil seal. That's just over here actually. And what you tend to find when engines overheat is the seals go really hard, and you can feel that on this seal here. The rubber's a lot harder than it should be. So again, we will be getting leakage from the rear of the engine. Oil leakage. Right, okay, so we can now just lift the crank clean out, hopefully. That's the plan. There we go. And we've got a shell just stuck under there, look. Number 4 main. All the rest are clear. Right, we'll just stick that over here. 2 shells. Yes, 2 shells on there. Okay, so what else have we got? Well, we've got yeah. So again, number 1 main bearing, little bit of scoring, nothing major on the other half of the shell. Number 2, oh, pretty clean. That one survived. Okay. Number 3. again, very good. No problems with that one. And 4 is on the crank. Oh dear. Oh dearie me. Geez, bit of white metal there, look. Look at the state of that. Destroyed. Yeah, and if you look there, this shell, it's got the little indent here, would have sat in there like that. And the oil supply comes in through here and it goes down this little galleyway and this little galley, and it goes into the bearing via that hole there. And I'm not really sure if you can see that on the camera, but that hole, the white metal, has basically semi-blocked that hole. Oh, come back. You can see there, look, there's the pattern. Oil comes in here, runs down that galley, and it goes in via here. Now, there was actually white metal covering the majority of that hole, so that would have been restricting the oil supply to this bearing. I mean, look, the white metal has, you know, it's been molten, basically, and it's been forced out the side of the bearing. It's come sort of delaminated away, completely screwed. Okay, well, so number 4 main bearing was completely shot. And lastly, geez, okay, this is number 5 upper shell, the shell that sits in the block. And again, look, we see the white metal there has migrated into the oil groove. It's just started to get pushed in, start to block the oil groove up. So that, again, that bearing is going to be getting very, very little oil supply. And again, it's starting to block the hole. So even this side here, look, it's completely filled the oil groove. Geez, this engine did not have, it wouldn't have run for very much longer. It actually started and drove onto the trailer when I picked it up. Amazing. Okay, so what's left? Well, all that's left, pistons and conrods, and they come out from the top. So we'll flip it round. Well, we'll flip it on its end, actually. We'll push them out from the side. Right, number 1 piston coming out. Wow, look at that. Look, this is number 1. Number 1 wasn't too bad on the bearings, but again, you can see around this area here, all that burnt, all that black residue, that's all burnt engine oil. That's basically stuck to the piston. It's got trapped between the piston and the bore. It's probably gummed up the oil ring, so the oil ring now doesn't work very well and it's not scraping the bore properly. Look at all the oil in there, look. Is there any play on the little end bearing? Well, no, the side to side, which is fine. Any up and down? No. Okay, that's number 1. Oh, now also don't forget, on the big end bearings, and there's the other part of the shell for number 1, which is actually not too bad, it's a little bit scored. We've also got the jet here, which sprays the oil up onto the back of the piston and onto the bore for cooling. Wow, that's cool. Never seen that before. Pretty pattern. Okay, so that jet sprays up onto the back side of the piston, it lubricates the little end bearing, and of course it cools the piston crown as well. Now, if that journal were to get blocked with white metal, then of course there'd be no oil spraying out of there, and all of this area isn't going to get cooled. That's a major problem, and it would cause the piston to pick up on the bore, and we'd see score lines running down the skirt of the piston. Okay, that's number 1. Let's see what number 2 is like. Remember, the engine got hotter and hotter and hotter the further towards the rear that we get. So we should see the problems slowly get worse. Oh, okay. Now this one is just a bit rough on the little end bearing. You can see there, look, it's a bit reluctant to move. It's not as free moving as the others, which indicates it's been getting us even less oil, or it's got even hotter. And you can see all that black residue again. Look at the oil scraper ring, absolutely gummed up solid with, you know, burnt engine oil. That's definitely not going to be working at all. Seems a bit like a RAV4 engine to me, doesn't it? Okay, well, no scoring on the skirts as of yet. Okay, let's see what number 3 looks like. Okay, again, still a little bit stiff on the little end bearing, but you know, moving relatively freely, not a major problem, but there is a slight increase in resistance, which is going to cause additional heat buildup. Yeah, same again, really, just lots of black oil residue burnt onto the underside of the piston. Oil scraper ring, gummed up solid again. Yeah, okay. And the shell, still okay for spraying oil to cool the piston down. Great. Right, the finale, number 4. What's number 4 got for us? Oh. There we go. Wow. Okay, well, starting at the big end shell, the shell moved, remember? The shell actually picked up on, it fused to the big end journal on the crankshaft, and it actually got pulled around, and you can see quite clearly it's not sat flat either side. It's been dragged around about 10 millimeters, and that sure as hell will have blocked. Let's see if I can get it out. Jeez, that really is welded in place actually. Now don't forget, we've got the little jet just here, and there should be oil provided to that jet through a hole here. This is the other half of the same shell. Now I was just thinking that maybe the shell's spun right round 180 degrees. One of these shells should have a hole in it to provide oil to that little jet there, look. And I was thinking that maybe the shells had swapped sides, and the one in the cap was the one that should be in the conrod, but there's definitely no hole in that one. So the hole will be, I would say, around like this area here, and it will be completely filled by the white metal. Okay, let's see if we can get that out of there. These are quite sharp, so be very careful. I don't want to lose any more blood. Bigger screwdriver. Sorry, Tang Tools, I'm always in trouble. Look at that. It's just welded in place, isn't it? I think it's time to put it in the vise. Okay, see if we can get the shell out of the conrod. Oh, look at that. It's even actually tearing the back of the shell. That is welded into place. That's part of it there, look. I haven't found the bit with the hole yet. Just see if we can get under that shell on this side. No, I don't think so. It seems to be pretty well. No, it's pretty well in there, isn't it? Okay. Well, it's pretty obvious that the jet here, which the drilling runs down there to here, definitely isn't getting any oil. Okay, so what's that done to the piston? Let's take a look. Right, well, if we just clean off that skirt, well, my last remaining rags for today. Oh, look at that. Part of the O-ring's fallen out. Okay. Well, actually, not too bad. I was expecting to see a bit more scoring on the side of the piston. There is a little bit, some very light scoring going on this number 4 piston. The oil ring is completely blocked solid to the point where, well, let's take it out. What the hell? It's all scrap now anyway, isn't it? Let's see if we can get in there. Okay, well, that's one bit. Where's the other end? There he is. Okay. Let's pop that out of there. Let's see if we can get that spring out. There we go. Yeah, look at that. Absolutely just chocker. with oil. Burnt on oil. Now the other two rings are moving around okay, so that's not a major problem. They're going to be doing their job. But if you look down here in this groove where the oil ring came out, look at all that burnt oil that's in there. That's going to impede it doing its job and sealing and moving around as it should do. Jeez. Okay, really bad. Okay. Little end bearing. Oh, plenty of movement. Is there too much movement? No. No. Okay, so that's number 4 piston sort of visually inspected. I'm not going to do any measurements on this engine. It's all visual inspections that we're going to carry out. But you can see that there's actually quite a lot that's not good. It's all down to the fact this engine basically ran out of oil. You can actually see on the conrod there, look. Can you see that it's black all the way up to here, and then it changes back to its normal colour? And you can see basically this area of the conrod, the bottom half, is what's massively overheated and caused the oil to fuse to the metal surface. And it was at this point here that it was cool enough for that not to happen anymore. Wow, pretty cool. Okay, well, we've checked the piston. Let's have a quick look in the bore of each of the cylinders and see if we can see any scoring in there. Now, it is really hard to see on camera scoring of cylinders, and just I can still see some cross hatching on that cylinder wall. That's impressive. Now, it does mean that maybe this engine's been in bits at some point in the past, because would you really see cross hatching cylinder cylinder wall after 275,000 kilometers? I don't think so. Okay, so number 2 cylinder, we can see, where's my pointy stick? There we are, look. See a little bit of scoring just starting there. What about the other side? Yes, same again, just a very light scoring on there. Cylinder number 3. That doesn't look quite so bad. Maybe a little tiny bit, nothing major. On the other side of number 3. Where's that rag? There we go. Well, it's definitely been rubbing, but I wouldn't say that there's anything seriously wrong in there. And problem child. Ooh, there is something I've seen that I want to show you. Number 4. Okay, well, yes, there is a bit more scoring going on there, isn't there? Yeah, and it's actually rough. There's actually grooves. It's not just surface, there's actually grooves in there, so that's definitely been picking up. What's the other side like? Oh yeah. Yeah, some pretty serious scoring going on there. Okay. Now, also, if you look down there, can you see that residue? Just spotted that actually, on the side of the cylinder. Now, obviously, when the piston rings go up and down, the oil scraping, this is as far down as it goes in the bore, and then basically nothing really rubs on this area of the bore. And you can see here, there's been some residue building up, and that's probably the vaporized oil, the overheated oil, which has been vaporizing and then sticking onto the side of that cylinder. Because obviously this cylinder is going to be pretty damn hot. Yeah, pretty good. All these little telltale signs of an overheated engine. Not too bad on that side, but of course it's going to be hotter on here because it's between another cylinder. Is there any on this side? Cylinder number 3. No. Okay, so there again, another telltale sign of an overheated engine. Right, what's left? Ah, the cylinder head. Let's get the camshaft out and see if that's been damaged. Okay, so we're going to undo these 10, was it 1, 2, 3, 10 bolts, 11 bolts, that holds on the rocker shaft. Once that's out of the way, we can inspect the lobes on the cam and the journals to see if that's been affected by the problems with the oil. come back. Okay, so with those 11 bolts removed, we should now be able to lift the rocker shaft completely out of the way and get a visual on the camshaft. There we go. Right, one rocker shaft. Look at that, they've all got little rollers on. That's really good. Remember the little Suzukis that I used to work on? Just had like a heel, like on motorcycles, that would run on those lobes. This is a lot better. Good job, Honda. Okay, well the camshaft itself needs to be withdrawn out of the head from one end. And looks like it goes that way. Oh, it does. There we go. Now, there's two parts again to these bearings. We've got the actual journal on the camshaft itself, and then we've got the bit inside the head here, the outer part of the bearing, which obviously gets an oil feed as well. And we need to clean everything off, and then we can have a look at it. But first glance, doesn't look too bad. Right, just put the camshaft to one side for now. Let's have a little look at these journals. Oh, spare bolt. Get rid of that. Okay. And what you're looking for, as always, is scoring on that journal. Do we have any? Ooh, a little tiny bit on there, nothing major. Okay, so this is the number 5 journal, and oh man, yeah, there is just to say feel some scoring starting on that bearing, but you know, it's not bad at all. Next journal. Not quite as bad actually, just really on the surface. Going to the middle journal, and get you a bit closer, maybe I can. There we go. You can see two very distinct lines that have developed where it's scored here, look. So there's definitely some wear occurring, and that's down to obviously maybe a lack of oil pressure because the oil leaking out of all that excessive clearance on the crankshaft. And again, coming across here, number 2, very light scoring on there, and the last one, again, we've got some scoring there too. Okay, so there are signs in the cylinder head of the camshaft journals that there are some problems starting as a result of this oil starvation and overheating, I suppose, really you could call it. Right, let's look at the camshaft itself. Okay, so camshaft obviously made of much harder metal, and realistically we shouldn't see anywhere near as much damage on here than we do inside the head, on the aluminium head. Okay, let's get rid of some of the oil so we can see what's going on. Very busy camshaft, this one, isn't it? Lots going on here. Okay. Lots of goo on there. Now this stuff again is where the cam chain connects to its sprocket. The sprocket mounts on here, and there was all that goo, all that residue, wasn't there, on there that we saw whilst we were stripping it down. So that's going to be number 1 cylinder. and that's going to be number 4. Well, number 4 is the one that failed, isn't it? So no, maybe there isn't any heat issues there. Maybe it is. Maybe it's a fraction darker. I don't know. Maybe not. Optical illusion. Okay, so journals. What have we got? Well, there's a line there, look, distinct line of scoring in there. I can screwdriver picks up on that. Okay, that one's pretty good. Now that middle journal, obviously you can see here it's got an oil groove. That's why there were 2 wear patches rather than just one big wide one. So that's quite acceptable. And of course there's less surface area for this bearing, so there's less oil for it to float on. So maybe that's why it's got slightly more scoring on it. These don't look too bad at all, actually. I've been very lucky to keep the oil supply up to the head, because on the old Suzukis it was these journals that used to seize in the head quite badly, and it would cause the cam belt to snap. But no, these all look very minor scoring. It's just sort of starting, isn't it? Okay, and the lobes, case hardening, all feels pretty good. Given the fact it's got rollers that run on these as opposed to heels on the rockers, that's far more, less resistance, less friction build-up, less pressure on the actual lobe itself, so it doesn't really need as much lubrication. Okay, well, I would say the camshaft is a pass, and it will be reusable. That's interesting to know, isn't it? Okay, so we've done the camshaft. We've looked at the journals inside the head. What we didn't look at was the actual rocker shaft itself. Because don't forget, we've got all these little rockers that are, moving backwards and forwards really fast. So we've got, bearing surfaces running all the way down here, and we really should be checking those as well, just to see, if there's been any kind of scoring and damage caused. Don't think there will be, but it's worth checking because these rocker shafts can get damaged, and again on the Suzukis we had that quite a bit. Okay, so all this stuff just comes straight off the end. Oh, we've got little springs and all sorts going on here, look. Okay, they should separate. There we go. Wow. So we'll get them all pulled off and we'll inspect the shaft, and then we'll maybe inspect 1 or 2 of these, the springy thing there, look. Well, I'm glad I'm not putting this back together again. Shims. Caps. Jeez, we're going to run out of mat. More shims. Okay, we'll start down here, I think. Oh, another shim, another springy thing. A bit more oil. Well, it's a good sign there's oil there. The engine hadn't completely run out of oil. Right, well, that'll do. And that's basically where it gets its oil feed from there, look, by the looks of it. And if we clean that off, there'll be pressurized oil running all the way down the inside of that hollow shaft. Ooh, there is a bit of damage. And all the way down there, and then you've got all the various outputs to the journals. 1, 2, another one there, all the way down. And if you look, hopefully you can see this, there is actually some scoring around here, here, quite a significant amount here. Again, along here. No, it's just a surface mark, it's not actually a indent. Okay, so again, lack of oil has started to cause problems with the other components inside the cylinder head. Right, well, let's just pick a couple of these at random. And these are all made of aluminium, by the looks of it. So let's pull one of these up. Slippy little buggers, aren't they? Right. Give it a bit of a clean. And let's have a look at that bearing surface in there, look. Oh yeah. Okay. Well, if you look inside there, can you see that the aluminium is just starting to pick up around that area? This side looks pretty good. If I take it to an area where there's no problems. See there, look, it's real shiny. That's what it should be like. And if you look here, there's actually just starting to damage around there. And you can see that there's oil that goes into this groove. It comes from the shaft, it goes into there. There's a little hole there for it to run through and oil the wheel. And then it looks like it sprays out here as well, and it's going to spray out over the tappet. That's all okay. And help lubricate that, you know, the tappet to valve head contact area. Wow. Good stuff. Bit of machining going on there, isn't there? Okay, well, you know, that's buggered basically. So, any more? Let's choose another one. Try one from down this end. This is one of the first ones to come off the shaft. These things won't be cheap. Oh yeah, there you go, look. So again, it should look nice and shiny like that. And this one, again, has got some pickup around this area here. That's damage. And you wouldn't put that back in an engine. You know, this is only aluminium. It doesn't take long to, you know, to create a clearance. So this thing's going to wobble around a bit and create noise and not be very accurate in what it has to do. Damn. Okay, well, there you go. Junk. So all in all, things are not looking very good for this little engine. Well, we knew it was scrap anyway, but it's interesting to find out all the things that have been damaged because of that oil issue. Okay, well, there's a couple more things we should still look at before we sign this off. One is the oil pump itself. Now, this is obviously responsible for picking the oil up out of the sump. Oh, I know what we should look at as well. We should look at the actual pickup itself. So we'll do that first. I'll cut it open so we can see the gauze. Look at the pickup, because, you know, this is where the oil gets picked up from the sump, sucked into the oil pump, and then the pressurized oil from the oil pump is sent around the engine to lubricate all the various bits and pieces. And, you know, if this was to get blocked, the pump's not going to suck oil, so it can't supply to all the bearings. Or maybe the pump's died. You know, maybe it's really badly scored and it wasn't creating any pressure. Maybe this is as clean as a whistling slide inside, and this isn't actually producing any pressure, and hence the bearings are gonna wear, create heat and die basically. And we'll look in the sump. The sump is really the telltale. All the fragments, if there are any, in the sump tell us just how much carnage there is, you know, to all the bearings and metal surfaces within this engine. And I know when we're doing motorcycles, we can actually often identify the colour of the fragments of metal and know which bearing they're from, or give us a really good idea of which bearings within the engine stroke gearbox are failing before we even pull the whole thing apart. It's a really good telltale sign of what's going on, and of course the more fragments you've got, the worse it looks. Okay, well, first job, I'll cut this open and we'll have a look at that gauze and see if it's blocked. Okay, well, what have we got? Well, first of all, look at this. Look at all this shrapnel. This is what's been sucked up out of the pump whilst that engine's been running the last few minutes of its life. And I dare say some of it's going to be magnetic. There you go. There's definitely some metallic stuff in there. What we'll do is we'll give it a wash, chuck it in some petrol, we'll wash it and we'll see how many fragments come out of there. But also look at what's stuck in the actual gauze itself. Now remember, all the oil that has to be supplied to all the bearings as the engine's running has to go through this gauze. And the gauze's job is to stop any any large particles. And it's done a pretty good job. But if you look here, look, you know, we've got a serious amount of debris that's been sucked up out of that sump and got trapped by this gauze. Because, you know, if that had made it into the pump, it would have badly scored the pump. And you can bet your bottom dollar that some of it has. Okay, so that's definitely a bad thing. Especially that. Right, let's pull the actual oil pump apart and have a look inside there. Okay, so the pickup for the oil pump is this hole here. And you can see there's some residue already, even on the bolts around there. Pretty nasty, actually. Sorry, Tang. Whoa, look at all that. Okay, right. Under these two bolts here, let's have a look inside. Only just, right. Okay. See if we can get in relatively easily. Okay. Here we go. Right. Okay. What have we got? What we're looking for is scoring, damage due to ingress of bearing particles that have been picked up, because that strainer is not going to stop all of it, you know. It's just going to stop most of it. There's no way it can stop the smaller stuff. So again, give it a bit of a clean off. Well, they look okay. What about the edges? Well, there is a little bit of score in there. You can just see some little rings going around there. So that could have been a bit of debris trapped on there. Now, what about this one? Okay. Nothing really to worry about. Again, there's just a little line there, but it is a groove, but only just. Yeah, okay. Right, and what about the actual casting itself? Because these are steel and the casting's aluminium. So if anything's going to score, it's probably the aluminium, isn't it? Being the softer metal. And again, aluminium, right. So look and see what's going on here. Contact points, pretty minimal actually. So on the top, first of all, the cover, again we've got some light scoring here. I mean, there's no contact around here anyway, but again there's some very light scoring, so that would have caused internal leakage, but only a tiny amount really. Don't think it would have caused any significant lack of oil pressure. And again, just starting to pick up, but this oil pump's done 275,000 Ks. That's fine. I wouldn't see a problem with that. Now we also have a pressure relief valve here. That's what this unit is here. And we can pull that apart. We can undo the nut, take it all bolt, take it all apart and see if there's any debris stuck in there that might stop that from working properly as well, or maybe hold it open off its seat. It's currently closed at the moment, but yeah, pull that up, have a look. Okay, good old device. Okay, so what have we got? Well, a bit more oil, lots of oil. Any particles in the oil? No, I don't think so. Okay, see if we can get a little plunger out. There we go. Well, that seemed to move pretty easy, didn't it? So no, I don't think there's any problems with that. So realistically, the oil pump survived. The strainer did its job. Yeah. Cool. Stick that on there, look. Right, what's left? Well, we've done the strainer, done the pump. Well, realistically, we've just got the sump to have a look at next. However, while we've been doing this, the particles that were in that strainer, I've been washing them out. And makes for some interesting viewing. Okay, well this is actually petrol in here, but I don't know if you can see or not, but can you see all the shiny fragments of metal that are in there? Hope you can. We'll find out when I edit it, won't I? But all those bits of metal, well, some of them are white metal from the big end bearing shells and the main bearing shells, but some of it looks coppery as well, as if it's from a bushing somewhere. Yeah. And all these black bits are basically just oil that's burnt to a solid. That's what all that is. Not good, is it? Just carbon build-up. Wow, plenty of it. Okay, right. Let's have a look in the sump and see what we can find. Okay, well, this is the sump on its side, and I've been spraying it with brake cleaner and a bit of petrol because I ran out of brake cleaner. And there's some pretty nasty black sort of tarry residue stuck on the sump that's still resistant to coming out. That's your burnt oil that's just sort of varnished itself onto the side of the sides of the sump. If we look a bit further down, you'll start to see some sparkly bits, and those sparkly bits, look at that, that's a lot of metal. You come down here, it's like shrapnel, and if you look in the tray, look at all that. That was once bits of an engine, and I cleaned that tray out thoroughly before I started this, just to prove just how much bearing material has been stripped from those shell surfaces because of the problems that this engine has had. And pretty horrific. So realistically, if you pull the sump off, even before you take the engine out of the car, if you're trying to decide whether or not the engine's repairable, I strongly recommend that you take the sump off in situ and have a little look at all the shrapnel inside, because if it's anything like this, and it's a Japanese kind of engine that's not really worth that much, then you're definitely looking at a replacement engine as being the cheapest option. Pretty cool, eh? Right, back to the bench. Well, there you go. I think we've pretty much covered everything we can on the affected components on that Honda Jazz engine. I think it was about a 2007 vehicle from memory. Neri will let you know. So what did we find? A quick recap. Well, obviously the the diagnostics before I even pulled the engine apart was a big end failure, and proved right. Turned out to be number 4. And some people might just pull the sump off, take the old shells out, look at the crank and go, it doesn't look too bad, just chuck some shells in and we'll sell it. But there were so many other problems with this engine that doing that would have been, it wouldn't have lasted very long. I mean, for a start, the engine was full of shrapnel, and that shrapnel is just going to cause further problems down the line with all the remaining bearings, what's left of them. The head, well, that survived pretty well. Camshaft, pretty good. Rocker shaft, yeah, reusable maybe if it's your own car, but there's definitely signs of wear, definitely signs of scoring. Not just wear, signs of scoring due to particles of metal in the oil. That's what I think. Pistons, piston rings, well, all the oil rings were junk. This engine would have smoked its nuts off even if you just re-rung it. It wouldn't have lasted 5 minutes, and it definitely wouldn't have got a warrant of fitness next time round. What else? Oh, cam chain was okay, that didn't matter. All the slippers, yeah, untouched. No problems with those. Crankshaft, scored. Not good. Wasn't good enough to reuse. Obviously, we need a grind, and then the next size up, or maybe 2 sizes up of shells. Who knows? Once you know all the measurements, then you get to work these things out. Oil strainer. just chucking new shells in and hoping for the best, that's not going to fix that oil strainer problem. That oil strainer was near as damn it blocked with all the debris. So sure, you'd have put the new shells in, put the sump back on, put some fresh oil in it, started it up, and well, you'd have had a tremendous lack of oil pressure around that engine. That oil pump was struggling to suck oil out of the sump. Now obviously there was a lack of oil because some of it had it overheated and it turned to fumes and got just basically burnt away. It was that hot. But also the oil, what remaining oil there wasn't able to get, most of it couldn't actually get to the oil pump, and there would have been definitely a lack of lubrication around that engine. And unless you clean that strainer out, you can have exactly the same problem. That's just going to continue, and all those new bearings that you've just fitted, they're all going to fail too. Futile, really, wasn't it? What else? Seals. Yeah, I mean, this is the crankshaft rear oil seal. Look at the state of that. It's even got oil burnt to the outside of it. And sure, one part of the seal is not too bad actually. It's reasonably flexible. But the outer part, the outer lip of that seal is rock solid. That seal has got way too hot. It's basically baked, and the rubber has gone really hard. So that engine would have had a rear crankshaft oil seal leak. It's going to keep leaking oil. That would also need to be replaced. Oil seals at the front. Well, remember it's got a cam chain. So this is the oil seal right down the bottom here. And remember, number 1 cylinder was the furthest away from number 4, obviously, which is the one that had all the overheating problems. This seal feels fine. So I don't think there'll be a problem with that. But again, there is a bit of residue on the inside there of that burnt oil sticking to the surface, but that's not really going to cause a problem, I don't think. So where do we go from here? Oh, pistons. Well, there wasn't a lot of scoring on the pistons, a little tiny bit. And there was a bit inside the bores. So you probably get away with keeping the pistons, giving it a hone, chucking some new rings in there. Obviously clean the pistons up a lot. Conrod, we had a serious problem with conrod number 4 because the shell, the white metal of the shell had basically blocked the oil jet that sprays nice cool oil on the underside of the piston to keep it cool. So you need to fettle all that. Distortion, well, some of these components have got very, very hot, and metal has a habit of distorting out of shape when it gets really hot. And all we've done in this video is a visual inspection. Pretty certain if you were to do a conrod twist and bend check on number 4 conrod, you'd probably find that it's outside spec. So you'd need a new conrod too. So why did we change this engine? Why didn't we pull it all apart like I've just done and fix all the bits? Well, I'll tell you why. Because we now live in a disposable world. A replacement engine for this vehicle was far, far less money than it would have cost for all the bits and pieces to fix this one. And it became unviable, an unviable repair. As soon as you hear a big end knock, it's not worth the hassle, because 9 times out of 10 you're going to find all the same problems that I found with this one. Much better to go and get an engine that's done, I think the replacement one we got for Neri had done 42,000 kilometers from new, which is nothing. It's like a new engine, Sure, if we'd fix this up, it's still an engine that's done 275,000 Ks. We're not replacing all the components. Whereas you get an engine that's done 42,000, everything inside the engine's only done 42,000 Ks. It's going to last for ages. What was the primary fail? What was the thing that failed first to cause this catastrophic damage to the engine? I think we need to look outside the engine for the problem. On this occasion, it was human error. If that engine had been serviced as it should be, and it had had oil changes on a regular basis as per the service schedule, or at least something similar to the service schedule, then I think it would still be running today without any problems at all. It's a good little engine. But because it was just basically, over time, the oil became less and less able to do its job as it aged. And the oil level, let's face it, after 75,000 Ks, it's going to be less than what it started off at, even on a really good engine. So the primary fail on this occasion was the driver, the person responsible for looking after that car and making sure it was serviced. And I hate to say it, but I think Mary will agree. She made a mistake. And those engines really should be having an oil change. I would say at least once every 10,000 Ks. If it was my car, once every 5,000 Ks. On my KTM motorcycle, it says 5,000 K oil change intervals. It gets an oil change every 2,000 Ks because I really don't want to be rebuilding that engine. And hey, let's face it, oil changes are cheap. Engine rebuilds, engine exchanges, engine swaps, engine replacement, very expensive. Okay, so what drove me to make this video? Well, I just wanted people to realise, have an idea of just how important it is to do regular oil changes on your car. Now, this was an extreme situation. This car, by the sounds of it, hadn't had an oil change for 75,000 kilometres, hadn't even had an oil top-up for 75,000 kilometres. And I mean, realistically, it's testament to Honda that this poor little engine kept going for so long. Bloody amazing, really. If that was back in the 60s, it had died at about 10,000 Ks, I reckon. So, I think what can be learned from this experience is make sure you do your oil changes on a regular basis. Otherwise, you'll be looking for a new engine. Okay, well, that pretty much brings us to the end of this video. It's taken me about 5 hours to film it. It's a bank holiday weekend, and I'm getting pretty ready for a beer now. Yeah, or a cider. Nice cold cider, be good. So I've got a heap of stuff to tidy up now. Look at all that lot. Golly, great fun though. And it told a pretty good story, I reckon. And that's probably one of the reasons why you don't rebuild Japanese engines very often. Because when they go wrong, it's amazing how many parts get damaged. Well, if you'd like to subscribe to the channel, why not click on subscribe? You'll see a little gear icon appear. Click on the gear icon, and then if you want to, you can turn on notifications, and that means that our friends down at YouTube will send you an email. I'm not going to say all the time, most of the time that I upload new videos. It seems to be getting a bit slack in its maturity, does YouTube, for some reason. Maybe there's so many videos going up that you can't keep the pace. So yeah, you could do that, tick the box, and then you'll get emails as and when I upload new videos. And there's usually 3 or 4 a week, I would say. All depends on what's going on in the workshop. You'll also find me on Facebook, Instagram, Google+, and Twitter. And feel free to communicate through any of those portals if you wish. But I would urge you, if you wouldn't mind, to communicate initially through YouTube on the comments section, because realistically that's where the videos are, and that's where people first look for all the answers that they need. And hey, you might ask a question that I answer, and that might be the same answer that they're looking for. So they've got what they need, and they can crack on and get the car fixed, or the quad bike, or the motorbike, or whatever it is. Okay crew, thanks for watching. Cheers, over and out.